Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Pereira. The Pakistan government has withdrawn terrorism charges against Mumbai attack mastermind and JUD chief Hafiz Saeed, paving the way for his release. On January 31st, Saeed and his 4 aides were detained by the Punjab government for 90 days under preventive detention under the Anti-Terrorism Act of 1997. They have been under house arrest since then. An official of the Home Department of Punjab government told a 3-member Federal Judicial Review Board that the government did not require the extension of Saeed and his 4 accomplices' detention anymore. The board accepted the government's plea and disposed of the matter. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze if Pakistan is going back on its commitments on terror. Joining me on the program today are Bharat Karnad, Research Professor, National Security Studies, Center for Policy Research; Major General Ashwani Kumar, Defence Expert; Smita Sharma, Deputy Editor of the Tribune; and Rana Banerjee, former Special Secretary, Cabinet Secretariat. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Professor Karnad, I'd like to begin with you. What has changed suddenly as far as Pakistan's direction towards terror is concerned?
I don't think much has changed. The fact of the matter is that the so-called house arrest was never really enforced. This chap was moving around all over the place, from Murid K to wherever points in Punjab, speaking to large audiences and so on. So that was a farce. So that never really applied. The other thing I think is that this was bound to follow, given the ISI's change in tactics, as I see it, wherein they see the Lashkar or the Jamaat-ud-Dawa, whatever it's called now, being used as a political party. Now that is obviously at the army's prompting. They want some kind of counterweight to the main political parties like the Nawaz Sharif's Muslim League and so on. So you had this path cleared, as it were, for Hafiz Saeed and his cohort to be streamlined or mainlined into Pakistani politics. Now, when this happens, they automatically get out of the terrorist kind of an overhang and are accorded a certain level of legitimacy by the Pakistani state. And that's where the danger is for us, in a sense, because now Hafiz Saeed can very legitimately say that he has nothing to do with terrorism. He's part of a mainline party, and that he's now into Pakistani politics. So what that means, I think, is complicates everybody's case against him for fostering and nursing terrorism. And as far as the Bombay attack aspect goes, well, I doubt whether the Pakistani courts would have been, open to dealing with him on that charge. With this, I think there's no possibility of that happening.
Sure. General, as far as Pakistan is concerned, do you believe that Pakistan was ever serious about dealing with terrorism?
No. Pakistan was never ever serious in dealing with terrorism. In fact, they consider this as their natural ally and asset. They are the one which are propping up Lashkar-e-Toba and Jaish-e-Mohammed and other militant groups which are operating against India. At the same time, Haqqani group and Taliban faction, they are the one which are operating in Afghanistan against, including Americans. So as far as Pakistan is concerned, it is a ISI and army, it is a state-sponsored terrorism. Anywhere the terrorism which is growing, the roots are in Pakistan. Pakistan is considered a heaven of terrorists, and hence they are the one. In fact, whatever they have done earlier with Hafiz Saeed and all, it was just a farce. Though they have put any restriction, but on ground there was no restriction. He was going around and he was doing what he was doing, and then they were trying to mainstream him by bringing him a Milli National League, a political party. Thank God, as on today, the Pakistan Election Commission has recognized, but time is not far off when they will also recognize. So the fact of the matter is, Pakistan is never ever serious to deal with terrorists. They consider them as their natural ally and asset. They want to utilize them to their best against their potential enemies and enemies, so-called against India and also against Afghanistan. So therefore, Pakistan is very clear whatever it may be. As on today, you are knowing what is happening, that Donald Trump has changed his statement. Very recently, he is trying to now patch up with Pakistan. The reason is very obvious, that today Afghanistan is a landlocked country. You like it or not like it, Pakistan is a frontline state and they have to make use of it.
Sure.
Especially for the logistic build-up in Afghanistan, being a landlocked country. They cannot have everything air corridor. In Charbar, they cannot make use of it because they are now trying to put pressure on Iran. So in case if they have to fight a out battle in Afghanistan, they need Pakistan. They are playing a blow hot and blow cold with it, trying to put pressure on him so that he does not support all those militant groups which are operating in Afghanistan against Americans.
Sure.
At the same time, they are also trying to make use of them. So it is a blow hot, blow cold policy which is there. But as far as Pakistan is concerned, rest assured, he was never serious about terrorism. It is something like that. Once you put your oath, the neighbor's house on fire, one day the fire will catch you.
Okay, sure. We'll get into US-Pakistan relations in just a bit, but let's focus on terrorism right now. Mr. Banerjee, as far as Pakistan is concerned, Pakistan too has been a victim of terror. We've seen several deadly attacks in Pakistan that have taken place. Several people have lost their lives in Pakistan as a result of terrorists striking there as well. Do you believe that the distinction between good and bad terror is what is hurting Pakistan?
Well, yes, certainly. They have always deemed the Lashkar or the Jamaat-ud-Dawa as the good part of the terrorists. In fact, you see, there are some factual errors, if I may be permitted to point out.
Sure.
What happened in January, 30th January, was in the context of the Financial Action Task Force resolution and an action to freeze their assets. So this action against Hafiz Mohammad Saeed was taken just to ward off possible US pressure by a new US administration, and it was apparently done under Section 11E of the Anti-Terrorism Act, which is a much stronger act. And factually, from January till now, Hafiz Mohammad Saeed has been under house arrest. He has not been able to move around, as you mentioned, maybe earlier, but not now. So this time there seems to have been some sort of a political or a legal fudge. Now we are being told that the detention that the Punjab government has slapped on him is under the Punjab Maintenance of Public Order Act of 1960, which is a much softer act compared to the Anti-Terrorism Act. So apparently the judges who were asking for specific concrete evidence to be shown about Hafiz Mohammad Saeed's involvement, the deep state, the army and the ISI, seems to have signaled that this evidence should not be shared or made public with the judges, as a result of which this softer implementation of the act has been done, and he's been sort of assured that he'll be released. And the understatement there, of course, what the professor said is that this will go hand in hand with the aim of mainstreaming the Jamaat. Now the mainstreaming has a certain objective. It has an objective of legitimizing them in a domestic political role, because the Jamaat is anti-sectarian. Its record in Pakistan has been that it has never involved itself in killing Shias, also against minorities in Pakistan, both Hindus and Christians. It has not been hostile to them. The Lashkar has been hostile to kufr or kafirs abroad, outside, in India. So it's an agent of the state, and they have always supported the military's line that violence or jihad justified if it is used by the state or authorized by the state. So what is happening is an effort to mainstream it, while there is also disillusionment with the major mainstream parties like PMLN, PPP, Imran Khan's PTI, and legitimizing the Jamaat possibly for a larger political role. At the same time, the army seems to hope that it will be able to control the hardline elements within these outfits, and therefore present a holier face before the international audience. That the effort seems to be.
As Mr. Banerjee has just pointed out, Smita Sharma, do you believe that there is more to it than meets the eye as far as Hafiz Saeed's release, I wouldn't call it release, but lifting of the house arrest is concerned?
Clearly, yes. There has been an increasing dilemma even within Pakistani authorities about what is the probable course in the future for somebody like Hafiz Saeed. Because though, of course, we've seen Donald Trump tweet recently after the release of the couple, one from Canada and America, after 5 years of being hostages under the Taliban. Donald Trump tweeted to say that our relationships are improving, but we shouldn't be overreading into that statement, because Donald Trump, ever since he came into the administration, he has made quite a few harsh statements, and Pakistan has been trying to read his mood. So like most of the countries across the world, people have been finding, even in Pakistan, have been finding Donald Trump very unpredictable, which means there has been pressure. If you remember, their minister Khwaja Asif, who was recently in DC, he went on to say that Hafiz Saeed was a liability for Pakistan, and the irony of it was that Hafiz Saeed actually slapped a defamation suit against the minister in a court of law. So there is an increasing sense that you have to accommodate Hafiz Saeed somewhere. He's still an asset. He has a strong network. Elections are now due in Pakistan in a year's time. 2018 technically is when the election should happen. They can be preponed as well. So the establishment does think that Hafiz Saeed can be accommodated in some way through some mainstreaming. The Election Commission rejected the first application, but it can always be revised. So there is that sense. And as far as, putting him under house arrest is concerned, remember in Pakistan, even if you look at the case of Zakir Rahman Lakhvi, while Lakhvi was in Adiala jail, he had every possible right. He even had rights of quieta. So not really too much can be made into what these house arrests are all about, because it's about the political willpower, and not just the willpower of the political, in fact, setup, but essentially of the army and the ISI, depending on what utility they see of these, in fact, terror masterminds.
Sure, the United States, Trump, Mike Pence have been raised on this debate over the last 10 minutes or so. So let's talk about that aspect of it. Professor Karnad, there was this elation of sorts in the Indian media where Trump said he's going to reach out to India. India needs to play a bigger role in Afghanistan to try and deal with terrorism, and they went on to the extent of blaming Pakistan for sponsoring terrorism as well. Do you believe that the Americans are only interested in what matters to them, and it doesn't really matter if terrorism reaches India or not?
Why are you surprised? The fact of the matter is, I think the Indian media and the Indian establishment and intelligentsia generally is ignorant of the simple fact that the Americans and the US government policies are oriented to their interest, not to yours. They're not out there to secure your interests or protect your interests. They are there to advance their interests as they see it. And that's been made clear from the very beginning by Trump, whether, he ditched his closest ally in Asia, that's Japan. He pretty much, ditched NATO. So we are not even in the reckoning, honestly and realistically speaking, where America's allies and strategic partners are concerned. I don't know why it is that we get so worked up and get so enthused when some bloke or the other in Washington talks up about being close to India. There are natural problems that will always come in between the two countries. We have very different sets of interests, and for us to assume or believe, that's even worse, that somehow the US is going to overcome their inhibitions in dealing with India, because Pakistan for them is an asset. It's a major policy asset. They do not want to lose it. And that's the reason why I think one has to pay more attention to what Defense Secretary James Mattis does, or what the Secretary of State Tillerson says, than what the President says. Because as I think Senator Crocker recently said, White House is an adult daycare center, which basically is synonymous with what Kim Jong-un said about Trump. That is a dotard. Dotard is an old fool, and that's exactly how he has put it, who doesn't know what he's talking about most times. So this is where the problem is. Now, you might have a White House that is very vocal and that twitters all the time and makes policy, if you believe what the twittering is. If that is policy, then you have one view of American interests. And it's very whimsical, dependent on the moment. He gets up at 2 o'clock or whatever, does something, and that becomes policy. On the other hand, there are more considered views that come out of the State Department and the Department of, the Pentagon, and they're not policy. Unless Trump puts his imprimatur, it's not policy. And he sort of disavows them at a moment's notice. So, you have a very anarchical situation where most countries are stuck having to decipher whatever Washington is taken seriously. That's why I always said from the very beginning, since before Trump assumed his presidency, that this is the guy who shouldn't be taken seriously, and that we should pursue our interests as we see fit without worrying about Washington is talking about or what it is that the US means to do. Otherwise, we'll be in desperately deep trouble, because to rely on the US to pick our chestnuts out of the fire is to rely on a very thin reed, and that will be very dangerous for us. And I think we shouldn't fall into that trap of believing that the Americans are out there to look after your interests.
You know, General, when the Americans seem to be cozying up towards India, you know, over the last couple of months you've seen the US criticize Pakistan over several things, but the Pakistanis seem to have reached out to the United States now. They've told the United States, you know, particularly saying that you tell us where the Haqqani network is and we will target them and we will take action against terror. And the Americans seem to be very happy with what's been done with the Canadian-American family that has been sent back to North America now. So is Pakistan also trying to play its cards out as far as the United States is concerned?
Of course. Pakistan is playing his card very cleverly. In fact, what Professor was also trying to bring out, you see, the issue which is today is that as far as America is concerned, America is only worried about the terrorism which is been coming and harming them in Afghanistan. That is whether it is Haqqani group or whether it is Taliban faction. He least bothered about what is Lashkar-e-Toba and Jaish-e-Mohammed are doing against India. This has happened because now since Pakistan have gone overboard and Pakistan was trying to create number of problems in Afghanistan, and America now brought out this issue and the issue between a good and bad terrorist. But fact is that as far as America is concerned, it is their own interest they are going to look. We have to look our own interest. He is not going to put pressure on Pakistan to, you know, basically go against Lashkar-e-Toba and Jaish-e-Mohammed as much as he will put pressure on those militant groups which are operating against their interest in Afghanistan. So this we have to guard. We have to fight our own battle. There is no denying that fact. But fact is that since America has brought out even Lashkar-e-Toba and Jaish-e-Mohammed and what has happened in BRICS and all, at least it has now come in international forum. The people start recognizing that these are international groups and they are equated with Haqqani and also Taliban. To that extent is okay, but we have to fight our own battle. We have to be prepared. We have to keep on putting our guard up. At any point of time we can be struck. America is looking after their own interests. America, what you were trying to convey is that initially they were putting pressure on Pakistan so that Pakistan come to, you know, their own interests and start helping Americans in fighting in Afghanistan. However, they are never serious to basically throw them away because they are frontline state. They need them logistically. So Pakistan will be utilized by America. Pakistan will make use of this advantage, and as far as America is concerned, he has got another problem, that if he leaves Pakistan to one lurch, there is a chance of Pakistan going into the group of China and Russia. He start now taking weapons from there. So America doesn't want that. And what we are saying as far as Trump is concerned, the only predictability about Trump is that he is unpredictable. So therefore, you can't be very sure what he says today will mean tomorrow. Defense Secretary and you can say State of Secretary are more reliable to that extent. So therefore, as far as we are concerned, we should be very clear in our mind. We have to guard our own interests. As far as Pakistan is there, he is playing a double game.
Sure.
And Americans will make use of Pakistan the way they want. Okay. They will not put pressure on him to put any pressure in a manner that the terrorist group which are operating against India are also being looked into the same platform or same performer as they are seeing those terrorists which are operating in Afghanistan.
Okay, sure. You know, China was brought up, Mr. Banerjee. You know, as far as China is concerned, contrary to common belief, even China would want better relations between Islamabad and Washington because it reduces the pressure on Beijing, doesn't it?
In a sense, yes, but I mean, China has no illusions about what the American policy will be in response to the well-known Pakistani duplicity which has been going on. What is of relevance is that, you know, there are the two strains of, you know, political thought in America, which they try to balance with each other. One is that we should not totally desert Pakistan, and we should keep on engaging with Pakistan. The other is that you should befriend India. The latest Ashley Tellis report, and Ashley Tellis belongs to a prominent Republican lobby. Now he mentions that America should not put any pressure on resumption of talks between India and Pakistan, and they should not put pressure on India to engage further with Pakistan, and India can live without resuming talks with Pakistan. So this is one set of ideas that is being projected, but which ideas will have how many takers, and whether US will go back to hyphenation with the present set of visits by both Mattis and Tillerson would indicate that the hyphenation lobby is again prevailing, because they will first come to Pakistan and then come to India. So this is the old policy coming into place again. So we have to be aware of that, and what the General and the Professor have said are very valid points. So we have to be aware of these trends.
Sure. Is that something Pakistan also realizes, Mr. Sharma, the fact that, the United States cannot do without them in the region, and Trump's South Asia policy is not going to succeed without the help of Pakistan, is something that the Pakistanis know, and that's why they don't seem to be too bothered at all at what's happening.
Well, this is something I've written about as well, Frank, that at the end of the day, when you look at the ground line of communications, as long as the United States is not looking at a clear-cut exit from Afghanistan, as long as the troops from United States and NATO happen to be on the ground, and given their edgy relationship that they have with Iran, on the other hand, so it's not like they can look at an alternate possible route, line of communication through Iran anytime in near future or distant future for that matter at the moment. Which is why Pakistan has always known this situation very well and has exploited this. The gun theory of Pakistan, pulling a gun to its head and asking the others to pull the trigger or to play along with their rules. It's notoriously in fact known, and that's something that Pakistan has been harnessing to their advantage. But what I'm little surprised about, as far as this Hafiz Saeed issue is concerned, because given the timing, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson is going to be in India soon, that Professor Karnad and of course Mr. Rana Banerjee were referring to. We are expecting him to be around in the last week of October, and he's also expected to hop on to Pakistan, because Hafiz Saeed at the end of the day is a man who has been designated as a global terrorist by the United Nations. He has a bounty of $10 million, which was put on his head by the US. In fact, Justice Department itself asking for actionable evidence against him to stand the scrutiny of a court of law. And Mumbai attacks were the attacks where 166 innocent lives were lost, including American citizens as well. So this timing might be a little difficult for Pakistan to allow for his release in case if these, the serious charges as they have been dropped and only frivolous charges remain against him. So I would be a little surprised, because at the end of the day, America will still want to sound very strong, very harsh when it is in New Delhi, and it might still do some patting of the back when it lands, when the leaders land in Islamabad, like has been their past policy. So we'll have to see, what is the calculation really as far as the release of Hafiz Saeed here is concerned. Frank.
Okay. Final comments now from all my guests before I wrap the program. Professor Karnad, more optics then after this visit, or during this visit, do you expect?
No, look, as far as the terrorism problem ex-Pakistan is concerned for us, we have to deal with Hafiz Saeed and those types of people operating out of Pakistan. The fact of the matter is, if he is an international terrorist and so labeled with a 10 million bounty, why should it stop any of our agencies or somebody to take him out and claim the bounty? $10 million is a lot of money. I'm sure if we put our minds to it, we can arrange for something to happen so someone can collect the 10 million bounty.
Okay.
Now, but the point of the matter is that's a policy decision. And, we leave it to the Americans, we leave it to the United Nations, we leave it to everybody and their uncles, except do it ourselves. Now, somewhere down the line, we have to champ on the bit, you see, and get going and take care of your own interests. So if Hafiz Saeed is a problem, deal with that problem. Not run to Uncle Sam at every turn.
Sure. General, what the professor has just suggested, do you think that's a viable option for us?
Of course, it is a very viable option. The fact is that we have to deal with Pakistan ourselves. It is our policy, strong policy, which has to be there as to how to deal with Pakistan. I feel that militarily we have to be very strong and we have to might. See, the surgical strike which has taken place has shown our intent that we are not going to now take it lyingly. And if the interest of the nation is there, we are going to come and hit you there where it hurts you maximum. So time is not far off when the things are going to be very clear, and then we are going to hit them. Fact of the matter is, as far as we are concerned, we have to deal with Pakistan ourselves. Our policy has to be strong. Internationally, we should try to bring out what Pakistan is doing with this good terrorists and bad terrorists. Militarily, we have to be very, very alert and alive. As far as our line of control is concerned, infiltration should not be allowed. If it comes, then you should completely destroy it. And also send a message across in Pakistan that if you keep on making use of this industry called terrorism, we are going to come and hit you in your backyard.
Sure.
Once this is made out, I am sure Pakistan will think twice. Though he is not coming to our way, but a time is not far off that we have got other means of surgical strike. You other day the air chief has told that it is not only that we have to personally cross the line of control, we have got certain weapon system that we can hit them where it hurts them.
Sure. Mr. Banerjee, a couple of gung-ho comments. Take out Hafiz Saeed and surgical strikes is what the general has suggested. Do you also share the same views?
Easier said than done, and not for want of trying. These are the two things I will say, but I would not like to elaborate.
Okay, sure. All right, then Smita Sharma, close the show for us with your concluding remarks on what's the way forward really for India as far as the terror situation in Pakistan is concerned.
Well, Mr. Banerjee has been there, seen that, which is why he didn't want to elaborate much. But I do think that, talking about taking out Dawood Ibrahim, taking out Hafiz Saeed is easier said, because US getting into Pakistan, the heart of Islamabad or Abbottabad, and taking out an Osama bin Laden is different from India trying to do the same. And I also agree with the general that while you have tried sending out a strong message of through surgical strikes, but remember, even after those surgical strikes, you've had at least more than half a dozen, in fact, major attacks on what can be called peacetime stations or army installations. So I think your own internal security mechanism is something that India will clearly have to work on. That is not something that either the Americans or the Russia is going to come and fortify for you. And as far as America is concerned, if Donald Trump is transactional, but he wants to send aircrafts to India, if he wants to sell Boeing aircrafts or crude oil shipments to India, I guess India will also have to learn to do a bit of leveraging there and see what can be done in terms of putting influence or pressure on Islamabad, even as it takes up this larger issue of terrorism constantly on the global stage.
All right, on that note then I'll have to call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. I'd like to thank my guests Bharat Karnad, Ashwani Kumar, Smita Sharma and Rana Banerjee for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. That's all the time we have today. See you again next time.